At least 30 members of an extremely violent Venezuelan prison gang. Yep, they've been busted in Chicago in the last 2 years. But don't worry. Multiple of them have already been released from jail. Yeah, we're not going to deport you. Just we'll parole you into the United States. It should work out fine. It should be all good. What's the deal with this? This is exactly what the residents of Chicago are pushing back on. Let's go Brandon Johnson, Chicago's mayor, right now, because he spent $500 million on supporting the illegals, and now he's asking for $300 million, which he didn't get in the form of increasing the property taxes of Chicago residents. He asked for $300 million, and you know what the vote was? 50-0. Let's go, Brandon Johnson, with your plan. Let's get into it. Here we go. I find it is borderline comedy how just mentally skewed these folks are that thought this is going to be the greatest thing ever. We're going to make ourselves a sanctuary city. And then, good Lord, they're expensive. Those illegals are expensive. And then you've got criminals getting busted. And then because you're a sanctuary city, local law enforcement isn't working with ICE. Nobody's deporting. Well, that may change. And here's the one word that may change that. Homan. Yeah. Let's watch a little video. This is a really good video from the Post, New York Post. New York Post got a lot of really good content going on right now. Let's take a little peek-see. Let's take a little peeky peek.
It's been nearly 6 months since the riot broke out at the border in El Paso, Texas in March. And we have since learned through Texas Governor Greg Abbott that over 100 of the individuals involved in rioting at that moment were actually suspected Tren de Aragua gang members. Now, this is something that Abbott revealed yesterday as he broke down new state initiatives to tackle the gang's stronghold in the United States and specifically Texas. He mentioned that they've been moving migrants through smuggling efforts in Juarez, Mexico, through El Paso, Texas, where the riot broke out just a few months before. Now, we went.
You know what was so crazy about those riots is that you've got that, kind of that temporary fence further back, and they pushed all that down. But then they, basically ran right up to the wall. And there's a whole bunch of, National Guard, whatever, whoever that was, probably Texas National Guard guarding that. What were they going to do? They overwhelmed the guards at the one checkpoint and then just came through. Where were you going? I mean, what was the thought here? I think it's just chaos and havoc, and they got tired of waiting, and they're like, screw it. We've got more numbers, and they did. And that's what's so dangerous about this. So, National Guard flooding the United States. Yeah, they're going to have to put as many people in as they can to try and, kick back on all these illegals that have felony convictions, or just flat shouldn't be here because they don't qualify for asylum.
Witnessed this riot firsthand, saw hundreds of migrants amass at the border before quickly turning on the soldiers who were keeping them at bay down there. Not much was known at that time about those migrants other than that they were mainly from Venezuela and had been waiting to come into the United States, hoping that once Border Patrol apprehended them, that they would be released into freedom. More than 200 of them faced rioting charges by the state, but those were quickly dismissed. Many of them were handed over to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and dozens were then released into the United States. It's not clear if those gang members were released as part of that group, but what is known is that Tren de Aragua members have been released into the country in the last couple of years to wreak havoc in the United States in places like Aurora, Colorado, where they're taking over apartment complexes, as well as in El Paso, where they are operating stash houses out of local hotels. In places like New York City, they've been shooting cops and smuggling those guns used to carry out their crimes into migrant shelters in food delivery bags. Much has been brushed under the rug by state and local leaders facing these issues, including in Colorado, where The governor there has told us that this is imagination, that they've been taking over apartment complexes. And now Governor Greg Abbott in Texas, in contrast with that, is taking his own actions to go after the gang, seeing that they're likely here to stay. The United States right now doesn't have diplomatic relations with Venezuela, which is now refusing to accept deportations from the United States. So many of them have removal orders, but can't get deported at the moment.
So how's that going to work? Let's talk about that for just a scooch. Are we just going to send them back to Mexico and, hey, you deal with them? You dealt it, you smelt it. Is that how it goes? I mean, if you can't toss them back to Venezuela because we don't have any diplomatic relations, who is going to take them? I mean, they're like a hot potato, right? That nobody wants. Ooh, this is hot. Ooh, yeah, this is not a good topic. Oh, here you go. How's that going to go? I don't know.
And Texas is not a welcome place for them now. He says he's designating the group as a foreign terrorist organization. He's increasing the penalties and trying to work to seize some of the assets of Tren de Aragua members. He's also looking to create his own database of Tren de Aragua members and is using state law enforcement to collect intelligence on them because the United States doesn't.
Good. Somebody should be doing it. Biden certainly wasn't. What a tool.
Doesn't have access to those foreign databases or information on the Tren de Aragua gang and its criminals operating globally. Now, looking back on the migrant riot as the only outlet on the ground when that broke out to record it, it's something that is shocking but not surprising because we saw how violent and brazen those migrants were when they amassed and took down those soldiers. But it's now clear that they were also part of just an organized effort and an organized criminal gang, allegedly, that took part in something much more nefarious.
If you're enjoying this content, love to have you check out our private channel. What do we got on there? We've got free crack pipes for addicts on Los Angeles Skid Row. Charities handing out free crack pipes on Skid Row, and addicts sell them to buy more drugs. I know you want to know more about that. How about Andrew Tate's advice for liberal celebs who flee the U.S.? Got to admit, that one is explicit as well. It's got some F-bombs in there. I do a reaction video to all that. What's this going to cost you? It's going to cost you the low, low price of $3.99 a month or $39.99 annually. You can get a 14-day free trial. Check it out. Thanks in advance. Back to your regular scheduled program. So I watched a bunch of the hearing, the Let's Go Brandon Johnson. He was pitching his $300 million tax increase to the citizens of Chicago. And again, the Chicago City Council resoundingly said it's never happened before. 50-0. No. No. And in hearing the comments from the constituents of Chicago, it was really interesting. They are pissed, and they have every right to be, that their Let's Go Brandon Johnson mayor, he's basically prioritized the illegals over the citizens of Chicago all day long. Spent $500 million on the illegals, gave them housing, gave them food, gave them clothing, gave them whatever they needed, gave them a ride wherever they needed to go. And yet, the folks of Chicago who are footing this bill, what are they getting? Yeah. And when you heard the public comment on this $300 million tax increase, you heard some of the residents talking directly to Let's Go Brandon Johnson. Ooh, it was spicy. They were heated. They were upset. And you know what? Rightfully so. But here's the but. You guys voted for him. You voted for a progressive. This is what progressives do. How is that progress feeling to you right now? How's that progress feeling? Not good, right? So keep doing what you're doing. Chicago went a little bit more red, right? Keep doing what you're doing. Dozens of members of Tren de Aragua have been busted in Chicago in less than 2 years. Well, that's good. So we've already got massive gang activity in the south side and west side, and we're just going to throw in a little Tren on top of it. And several have been allowed to walk free, according to records viewed by the Post. The alleged crimes range from traffic violations to robberies and drugs, according to the records, which were obtained by America First Legal, a think tank founded by Stephen Miller and other veterans of the first Trump administration. At least 30 suspected gang members have been arrested by the Chicago Police Department between January 23 and September 2024. As early as August 2023, the Illinois Governor Office had received alerts. We podcasted on those about gang activity, human trafficking, and gunshots at and nearby Chicago migrant shelters, according to internal emails. You had all kinds of criminal activity going on. The number of Venezuelan women being trafficked right now is through the roof. But you know what? Nobody's ever going to come up with those numbers because these ladies are basically being told, hey, we'll get you into the Estados Unidos, land of the free, home of the brave. We'll get you there, but we're going to need you to work that off. And they're not going to work it off in pleasant ways. And Tren de Aragua just basically sets them up and says, hey, here's your job. You're going to be servicing all these other folks. And, good luck with that because human trafficking and sex trafficking is their number one business. Now they backfill that with selling drugs, running dope. Because now you've got the perfect combo. You've got the Pepsi and the piece of pizza, or the Pepsi and the hot dog from Costco. You got human trafficked sex victims, trafficking victims from Venezuela. And then the men that abuse them also love their drugs because that just kind of goes hand in hand, right? So they can sell them drugs, sell them a young chick, and away we go. And the world is a better place, right? That's Joe Biden's America. Yeah. Wide open southern border. Yep. So if you're okay with that, keep voting blue because you're getting there. You're getting there. In one email sent by an official with the Illinois Department of Human Services that month, state officials were advised to look into issues of gang recruitment at shelters. I mean, we just didn't know, right? We didn't know. Didn't we have some intel somewhere? I mean, I know you and I as regular citizens are like, what? What's happening? Who's coming? I thought they all just had teddy bears and, they were just looking for a life it's better than what they had in Venezuela. I didn't know criminals were coming in. And they just flood in from a violent prison gang. I mean, what kind of silliness and nonsense is this? But Tren de Aragua was still able to establish a foothold in Chicago. One of the 30 suspected Tren de Aragua members arrested in the Windy City was Venezuelan migrant Johannier Barrios Moreno, 27, who came across the border illegally into Brownsville, Texas. That's where Kamala Harris went because she wouldn't have been able to come into Eagle Pass or any of the other real hot spots because she would have been chewed up and spit out. In May 2023, but was released because he came in with his wife and son, Homeland Security told the Post. All right, so you got a member of a violent prison gang, but because he's got his wife and his kid, I should let him pass. Those days are gone. Those days are gone, right? I mean, no, that's not going to happen moving forward. At least not in the mass numbers that we have seen. He was arrested by Chicago police in May for a traffic offense. And then again for domestic violence on September 12th. Let's see. So he's a member of a violent Venezuelan prison gang, and he commits domestic violence, and he doesn't really pay attention to United States traffic laws. That sounds like a winner. Let's just keep him. Let's just see how this story goes. Should be fine. And this was after an immigration judge had ordered him deported. So domestic violence, criminal activity, and he's not legal in the country, and he's got a deport order. So if you're okay with those folks kind of hanging out in Chicago, which I know people in Chicago are not, let Mayor Brandon Johnson, let's go Brandon Johnson know this is not what we want to see happening, and no on the tax increase. I mean, that was just so blatant. It was a try for. It was a try for. Hey, let's just, run this up the flagpole and see how this goes. Because Chicago's got about $1 billion deficit. $1 billion deficit. Yeah. So ICE officers eventually arrested him again on September 19th. Another suspected gang member, Venezuelan migrant Edwin Cameo, 26, was arrested in December 2023 for allegedly manufacturing and dealing drugs. Oh, another sweetheart. Well, I'm sure he's contributing to the deaths of many American citizens, but I just ignore all that because they're not taking over the massive complexes in Aurora, Colorado. That's a figment of your imagination. just like we were told Antifa was. But now Antifa is marching free Palestine on the regular, right? I mean, what is up with that? Don't they have anything better they can be doing? Apparently not. They're not working. You and I are paying their tax. You know, we're covering them. So if you feel good about that, yep. But his charges were dropped in February per sources. ICE officers, along with the federal anti-gang unit, arrested Carrillo in April for suspected gang ties. Well, some folks are saying that with the new change of administration, things are going to change. I think they will. Because this is a mission that can be accomplished. Exactly how many people they can throw out of the country, I don't know. I don't know what the resources it's going to take to make that happen. I don't know what that looks like. You know what I mean? You know, what are the actual logistics of it? And I don't know. But if they take a hard stab at getting some of these criminals out, I'd be okay with that. Do I want to break up families? Well, you know what? In any war, and this is a war of a wide open southern border, in any war, there's gonna be collateral damage. Do I want to see little kids pulled from their families? You know, that breaks our heart, you know? No, of course not. But in the effort to get out the illegals that don't belong here, whether because they're a criminal or because they don't qualify under current asylum law, then, hey, you know what? You got to go. And wherever you go to, you got to go to. And you'll probably make another run and try and come back and get in the good old US of A, because people aren't going to other countries. And unlike these people who are like, I'm moving to Canada if Trump wins, and then they never do. You know, what a bunch of weak individuals. They're just mentally weak, right? They can't take a little conflict, because we've spent the last 4 years dealing with this kind of silliness at the border. A wide open border where drugs just run right through. Drugs that killed my son, Brennan, at age 27. Yeah. Back in the olden days, you could get a Xanax, take a Xanax and chill out. Now it kills you. Make that make sense, right? Make that make sense. So, you know, how's all this going to go down? Don't know. Wild stuff, though. Biden administration open border policies have wreaked havoc on communities all across the U.S., including Chicago in particular, because Chicago took on a lot of Tren de Aragua. In Chicago, Tren de Aragua has been spilling into the already gang-ridden South Side, talked about South Side and West Side of the city, aggravating the local gangbangers. I mean, if you didn't think this was going to happen, if you thought that local gangbangers, you know, whatever they are, I don't even know who's in Chicago. My Chicago gangbanging knowledge is nothing. I don't have any, right? Just the stories I read and, you know, the stories I've covered, which is, Tiffany Henyard of Dalton and Township of Thornton. I've read a lot of stories there. But it just doesn't seem like the gangs in Chicago are going to give up just because some new guys are on the block. Okay, guess we give up and go home. You know, we're all done because, a new kid came on the block. No, it's going to be violent. It's already violent in Chicago, right? Every 2 minutes, 45 seconds. Well, you know what? Since we've been talking, one murder has taken place on average. About every 14 minutes, somebody gets murdered, gun violence in Chicago. And every 2 minutes, 45 seconds, somebody gets shot. Not necessarily killed, but they get shot. So we've had, probably a good 6-7 shootings in the time that we've been talking, and one person died in this little segment right here. So when you've got that kind of violence going on, and then you throw another layer of a violent Venezuelan prison gang on top of that, I'm sure it's going to be fine. I mean, it's all going to work out. Let's not overreact. So the article goes on to say, when the black gangs here get fed up with the illegalities and criminal activities of these migrants, hey, you're stepping in on our criminal activity. Out you go. Or non-citizens, the city of Chicago is going to go up in flames, and there will be nothing the National Guard or the government can do about it when the bloodshed hits the streets. It'll be blacks against migrants. Tyrone Muhammad, 53, a former gang member who now runs a street patrol and violence prevention program called Ex-Cons for Community and Social Change. And guess what? Majority of them, they voted for Trump. Huh. Interesting. You are seeing a real resurgence in Chicago, in Illinois, of the Republican Party. It's not just going to come all at once, but it's going to inch along because folks are recognizing, hey, Let's Go Brandon Johnson has done absolutely nothing for us. In fact, he is proposing to take our hard-earned equity away in the form of $300 million in taxes. Meanwhile, he literally spends $500 million. The city shelled out almost $500 million over the last 2 years to support more than 42,000 migrants. How do you like them apples? But now, Chicago citizens, we're going to need a quick $300 from you. We're going to need a quick $300 million from you. It's going to be great. You're going to love it. I mean, the return on your money, well, I mean, we already spent it. So, that's why we're trying to come up with this money. It's like Kamala Harris. She has been running ads to her low-level donors, just begging for money because she spent $1 billion and she's $20 million in the hole. And there's still a bunch of races left that they need money to because, they're trying to influence those races. Don't you think that since we are basically past the election time that, most of that damage has been done? I kind of do too. Yeah, what happened. So for the next 4 years, you know what we can always say? Whatever the left brings up as far as, well, this shouldn't have happened. They want to throw that kind of thing out there. All you got to say is, how'd that work out for you in the election? How'd that work out for you? What? Again, tell me the numbers. Tell me the numbers. 312 electoral votes, popular vote, House, the Senate, Supreme Court. Yeah, that's point set match, isn't it? Yeah, for now, don't get too complacent. But what's going to happen in city of Chicago? Man, are they going to have what this guy said, go up in flames? More riots because of something that the Biden administration did? Don't want to see that. Don't want to see riots in Chicago. We already had a bunch of that, right? Enough of that. But is that a natural byproduct of what's going to happen? Stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed, hit that like button, all that good stuff, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.